Hello, everyone. Welcome to Resistance Live and my squeaky chair, which seems to just be getting squeakier over the 2nd of April, 2025. It's a good day. I feel like we had a great day yesterday. And, you know, I hesitate to say we've turned a corner because I don't actually think we have completely turned a corner. But I think there are some signs of optimism and confirmation that we absolutely have to keep pushing. So we have an enormous amount to talk about today. Today, for our visually challenged viewers, I'm wearing a cream-colored sweater. My hair is down. I'm a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty, blonde-haired woman. I'm in front of my bookshelf and my yellow utility cart, and I'm coming to you, as always, from occupied Muncie, Lenape, and Mohican land. Okay, so Cory Booker broke the all-time record for the length of a Senate speech last night, which was previously held by Strom Thurmond, who filibustered for 24 hours and 18 minutes against civil rights in 1957. The contrast is not lost on anyone, I don't think. And if you watch the final moments of Cory Booker's speech last night, I don't know how you made it through it without being in tears. I will say that I think Democrats desperately needed this shot in the arm. And while I know that there are some on the left who are really disappointed with Cory Booker, have been disappointed with Cory Booker, he did take a moment toward the end to say that he hasn't been perfect, that the Democratic Party hasn't been perfect, that they have failed to rise to the moment in certain ways, and that has allowed a demagogue to flourish, that it's time to course correct. And, you know, I appreciate all of that. I actually think all of that is desperately needed. And we will never have perfect leaders, and we need leaders nonetheless. So I was very pleased by all of it. And I have to say that I feel like the sort of carryover from that is continuing. Susan Crawford won her race for the Wisconsin Supreme Court last night, notwithstanding Elon Musk's illegal tactics to try to influence voting in Wisconsin and the fact that he dumped $19 million of his own money into her opponent's race. The takeaway from this is that billionaires are not infallible. And I think we also needed that message as a shot in the arm. The other thing is this has huge implications for the midterms and for the 2026 election cycle, because obviously the Wisconsin Supreme Court determines electoral maps, e.g. whether they are unlawfully gerrymandered by racial or political orientation, so to speak. Also, we'll have determinations about whether or not votes will be counted in particular ways. And so maintaining Democratic control of the Wisconsin Supreme Court as a key swing state, super critical for the upcoming election cycle. So very, very, very good news there. Also, notwithstanding the fact that we lost the 2 seats that were up for special elections in Florida, the swings are very promising. So I just want to point out that these are districts where Trump won by 30 plus points 5 months ago. Okay. Both of these Republican candidates struggled in their own ways. And the swings were like at the bare minimum by 16%, 16% in the last 5 months. Now, there are some people on the Patreon feed and some other people out there on my Blue Sky who I'm going to assume are operating from a lack of knowledge about what was going on in Florida, because I have been pointing out literally since Matt Gaetz was nominated for the attorney general position late last year, that his district and the CD, both the CD1 and the CD6, both districts that were up last night, he was CD1, are among the most gerrymandered districts in the country. Literally, they have been engineered block by block to make it almost impossible for Democrats to get elected. So there were some of you yesterday on my Blue Sky, this morning on our Patreon feed with questions, who were like, what's wrong with the Democrats in Florida? Why didn't they mobilize the vote more? Why weren't they going door to door? Excuse me, they were. And again, I have to point something out because I have friends who work in Florida politics on behalf of Democrats and on voter protection issues there. People worked their asses off for those 2 special election campaigns, like worked really, really, really hard. And one of the things that you have to understand is that in places that are radically gerrymandered, like these 2 districts, even swinging things by this much is miraculous. It also means, by the way, that there are Republicans who are changing their minds about what's going on with Donald Trump and Elon Musk's agenda. So you have to take wins where you get them. And, you know, right, as people are pointing out, like David Hogg went door to door with Valmont in Florida for her race, right? I mean, like, literally there were Democrats in Florida from all over the state who came into the CD1 and the CD6 to do mobilization work for this. So one thing that really just pisses me off, I'll be really honest about it, is when people do make uninformed comments like this that blame Democrats for things like turnout. Okay. When you are living in a district that is gerrymandered so that 70% of the people who live in it are Republicans, turnout is not your problem, right? Like if you're a Democrat and you are achieving turnout and flipping Republicans, which is very clearly one thing that happened last night, that is a huge success, a huge success. So I really want to caution everybody to like not go for the like easy jugular, see, I told you so kind of comment around all this sort of stuff. All right. Honestly, we have to live in the space of nuance with a lot of this, which I know is very difficult on social media. And I know it's a lot easier to be angry than to step in and do the work. But I personally find those kind of comments not just ill-informed, but also really detrimental to our cause. What happened in Florida is actually a huge victory for Democrats in the context of how the needle has moved in just 5 months. And that, by the way, my friends, is momentum in a state where like really bad shit is going down on a daily basis. Like people can't get their homes insured anymore. Books are being banned. Whole colleges are being taken over. The prosecution of people involved in abortion care is real. And to be able to move the needle that much is huge, like a huge victory. So people need to start recognizing that the results from last night, both in Wisconsin and in Florida, should make Republicans very nervous. And that's, by the way, also really good for us because think about it. This is just 5 months since the November election. Where are we going to be by the time we get to 2026? Okay. And I'm going to answer this really quickly because I had a lot of questions this morning on the Patreon feed about other special elections. The only other special election that is coming up this year is in the Arizona 7th. That one is not until late September. So we have a ways to go until we have more special elections, but we have other elections going on at the state level that you should be paying attention to. Like here in New Jersey, there's a governor's race this year. In New York City, there's like a mayoral race underway right now. Don't rank Adams or Cuomo. Don't rank them. It's ranked choice voting. If you rank them at all, your vote could potentially contribute to getting them elected. Do not rank them. More on Eric Adams in a minute. We have other state-based elections happening all over the country that are really critical. So it's very important for you to know what's going on in your local area, okay? Do not neglect local elections. If you have questions about this, you can go to Ballotpedia and look up your state and you will know what's going on where you live. Okay. One other bit of very good news this morning. I'm enjoying this one just a little too much. I'll be very, very honest. The Tesla earnings reports came out this morning for the first quarter. They've had the largest drop in sales in history. And they are down by 13% in the quantity of cars that they have sold. This means very grave things for Elon Musk, because I'm going to remind you all, by the way, that the vast majority of his wealth is tied up in stock. Tesla, SpaceX, the Boring Company, these other entities that he founded and co-owns, okay? I'm going to remind you all, Tesla is a publicly traded company, so he doesn't own all of it, all right? But he owns a lot of stock in Tesla. And the fact that Tesla's stock is now like, woo, this morning, I don't know, man. I get joy out of seeing like fascist billionaires suffer. I hate to say it, but I do. And this one feels particularly sweet. I'm also just going to mention that Tesla takedown has been an incredible movement, continues to be an incredible movement. And there is more news this morning on this, where apparently Trump's inner circle has been advised that Elon Musk is going to be stepping back from his role in the federal government within the next few weeks. Now, it's a little shaky, this reporting. It seems to be indicating that he will stay on in some kind of like informal advisor role. But we heard the other day that he was going to be pulling out of his role in federal government by sometime in May. That, by the way, is conditioned on a federal law that says special advisors to the president who are unconfirmed can only serve for 130 days before they have to stop. But clearly, he's feeling the pain in the context of what has happened to what was his signature company and actually is now no longer the place that holds the majority of his wealth. So we've talked about this a lot on here, but I mean, I'm very pleased with this. Like, his stock is down 50%. Stock of Tesla is down 50% since the election. Pressure works, people. Like, that's the message for today, okay? Pressure works. Keep it up. All right. Mallory McMorrow announced her Senate campaign yesterday. I'm so excited about this one. She is running for the seat that has been vacated by Gary Peters, announcing he is retiring. Mallory McMorrow, if you don't know, just an incredible state legislator, has given a whole bunch of speeches about the importance of protecting trans kids and protecting abortion rights, and is a firebrand. And her whole platform for the Senate race is already about the Democratic Party needing new blood. So I'm super excited about this announcement. Obviously, it's a 2026 race, so we have a long time to go between now and that election. But I'm really, really excited about this particular run. I'm a huge fan of her. She's amazing. So that's also something really good to get excited about today. Okay, we have to talk about a few things that are like not so hot. So today is what Trump has termed Liberation Day. I have to say that I find that just like among the worst propaganda ever. Essentially, what he's doing is announcing 20% tariffs on everything. everything. And the latest reporting right before I came on the air was that like they're planning this whole thing in the Rose Garden at 4:00 today, but they still don't know exactly what they're going to say from a policy standpoint. The latest reporting that came out like literally 5 minutes before I went on the air is that now the tariffs they're announcing are going to be the ceiling and are negotiable down from there. Who the hell knows what any of this means? What it does mean is that, you know, the U.S. economy is going to shrink, that everyday people are going to have to pay more. There was a conservative estimate this morning that said that the average predicted impact to every American family as a result of these proposed tariffs is an increase in $3,800 per year in costs. $3,800 per year. When like the vast majority of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. It's obscene. And there's like literally no reason for any of this. It's all like fabricated nonsense out of the mind of a madman and his crazy advisors who are completely unqualified. So I don't know what we're going to hear at 4:00. I'm really not sure that any of this is going to stick because, you know, we all now are conditioned to like tariffs here, not today, tariffs here, not today, changed my mind, tariffs here. Mexico promised us police at the border, no more tariffs on Mexico. So who knows how this is going to play out. All right. But it's dangerous. It's, you know, again, markets like consistency. So the lack of consistency in what Trump is doing is actually adversely impacting the economy in and of itself, even if none of the tariffs stick. And so I don't know, folks. We'll see. All right. One other thing that we have to talk about here is that this morning there was a hearing on the Hill. Oh, God. I mean, these guys are relentless. There's a hearing on the Hill. Because the GOP is trying to eliminate nationwide injunctions. Now, let me make something very, very clear here, okay? Injunctions, I said this yesterday, injunctions are a part of the toolkit that courts have to enforce the law. And when a president writes an EO that is illegal, that applies nationwide, the remedy to that is a nationwide injunction. So the GOP is really mad right now, especially like, you know, all of MAGA, just pretty much the whole GOP. They're very mad right now that the courts have been putting into place these nationwide temporary restraining orders and injunctions. And so this whole thing is about that. They're trying to undercut the authority of the courts to enforce the law. The hearing is ongoing. The people speaking on behalf of the Republicans, and there are people speaking on behalf of the Democrats who are like, what the hell are you guys doing? But people speaking on behalf of the Republicans are, I don't know, man, crazy. I listened into some of it and, you know, yes, they're lawyers, but like they're claiming that nationwide jurisdiction should not be permissible for individual district court judges. So what that would mean is that every district in the country, reminder, there's one and often many in each state, would have to issue similar injunctions to stop an EO that's like inherently unlawful nationwide. It makes no logical sense. None. And it's like, by the way, directly outside the scope of anything related to how injunctive relief is supposed to work. So it's anybody's guess whether or not this is going to result in an attempt to pass legislation. they seem to be leaning in that direction. This is something that we're going to have to be prepared to push back on, because basically what they're trying to do is stop the courts from stopping Trump. But I just kind of wanted to make sure you were all aware of it, because they are, the GOP is relentless right now at trying to get this fascist agenda pushed as far as it can, because they know it's unpopular. And they're doing it for ideological reasons, and sometimes because it enables their grift. And the thing that is holding fast right now for our democracy is the actions of the courts. So I really do want people to be aware of this. Also, if and when it comes to the point of legislation, we're going to have to completely flood the hill with phone calls as usual. So that's something to just keep your eye on. All right. Case against Eric Adams was dismissed this morning, finally. I'm just going to say something here. Judge Ho really didn't have a choice here. And I know that there are people who, once again, have fallen into the, there's never any accountability. Nothing ever happens to these people kind of thing. But I just want to point something out here, all right? And again, this is a moment. I'm sorry for the mockery this morning, but I'm really frustrated with this kind of bullshit today. If you're not informed, you shouldn't be commenting. That's kind of how I feel about it right now. And I know it's social media. What do I expect? But, I'm really tired of it. I'm really, really tired of it. Okay. So let's just remember the setup here. Okay. Eric Adams is indicted by Biden's DOJ. And it wasn't Biden's DOJ. It was the DOJ operating independently, because Eric Adams, by the way, is a Democrat. Okay. Please, can we not forget this? He was indicted on a swath of corruption charges that took down essentially his entire mayoral administration. Okay. Trump comes into office. Eric Adams starts making noises about wanting a pardon. Doesn't get a pardon, but decides that he's going to barter the accessibility of New York City to ICE in exchange for Trump's DOJ doing something for him. This is all very mafioso style stuff. All right. Trump's DOJ, and this is your reminder, it was the DOJ that was prosecuting Eric Adams, right? Trump's DOJ says, we want this stuff dismissed. And then there was this bloodbath, let's not forget, where I think by the time it was done, there were eight lawyers in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York and in D.C. who quit because they refused to put their names on the papers requesting the dismissal because it was unethical and they were going to lose their bar licenses. And in the end, it was signed by Emile Beauvais. You will all remember, Deputy Attorney General, also was Trump's, defense attorney in the case that was litigated against him in New York State. Emile Beauvais finally signs it, right? And other people sign off on it. And so the judge goes, the case goes before Judge Ho, who was assigned the case to begin with, and Trump's DOJ, yes, and Eric Adams' defense attorney are both you have to dismiss this. And what Judge Ho does is say, hold on a hot second. I'm actually going to appoint someone to argue why the case shouldn't be dismissed. Okay. And so we went through that process, and Judge Ho got advice from the attorney who, was brought on to evaluate this. And that attorney basically said, you kind of don't have any choice. You can't force the DOJ to prosecute him, right? Because they're not going to do it. There's nobody left to prosecute him. Okay. But Judge Ho did do one interesting thing here, which is counterintuitive, but I want everybody to understand this. He dismissed the case because he didn't really have a choice, but he dismissed it with prejudice. And what that means is that the charges can't be brought again. Now, this is a double-edged sword, because it does mean that Eric Adams has gotten off scot-free for all of his corruption that violated federal law. But it means that Trump's DOJ doesn't have a weapon to use against Eric Adams to force him to comply with ICE and all of their detention and kidnapping and disappearing. Okay. So now Eric Adams, I'm not claiming he's going to do this, but he can essentially say to ICE, and there's nothing that can be done to harm him in the form of a prosecution, because those charges cannot now be revived because they were dismissed with prejudice. All right. So it's a very complicated situation. It is obviously rife with corruption, and simultaneously, this judge had no other choice and conditioned it in such a way that at the bare minimum, if Eric Adams decides he doesn't want to play ball anymore with the Trump administration, he doesn't have to. And that leaves an inkling of hope for all of the people in New York City who are potentially being targeted by ICE right now. So very complicated. Not a situation where we can say like the judge just let him off scot-free. That's not what happened. This is not a moment to like parrot all the idiots online, pardon my French, who are like, nobody's ever held accountable for anything. This is a complicated situation. Okay. It's an extremely complicated situation that obviously has been enabled by Eric Adams' corruption and the DOJ's corruption, where the judge was between a rock and a hard place and he did the best he could. Okay. He did not have any choice but to dismiss the case. And yes, that sucks. And elections have consequences. And, it would be really nice if we had a functioning DOJ that operated independently from the executive branch. But, this is where we are for now. Okay. Can Trump make his life miserable if he doesn't comply with Trump? I don't know what that means. I mean, Trump is making everybody's life miserable. So it is what it is. What he can't do is threaten to revive a prosecution now against Eric Adams and throw Eric Adams in jail if he stops ICE from raiding, let's just say hypothetically, New York City public housing. And I actually kind of consider that a win. So that's what the story is there. Okay, we had one question this morning on the Patreon feed, which is worthy of longer discussion. Like I might go into this in a little bit more detail on Progressive Coffee Hour. Reminder, you can become a subscriber at patreon.com/resistancelive if you want to join us on the weekends for Progressive Coffee Hour, which may soon change to Progressive Happy Hour during the week. I don't know. We're going to see. But that is our more loosey-goosey conversational broadcast of the week for Patreon subscribers only. The question was this, and I'm going to just touch on it briefly here. What do I do with family members and friends who come at me with this statement that both parties are corrupt? Okay. So, as with any other form of conversation that you're going to have with somebody who is using a talking point that has clearly been influenced by propaganda, you want to respond to that with, that's really interesting. Why do you think that? Or where did you hear that? That creates an opening to start having a discussion about like news sources. But also, if it's like, I read it on Facebook or I heard it on Fox News, that's going to tell you something about where they're getting their information. All right. I will also just say this. There was very clearly an effective propaganda campaign during the 2024 presidential campaign that claimed that both parties were the same, right? That claimed that voting for one party or voting for another party made no difference. So one of the things that you can do with this when you figure out like, why do you believe that? That's really interesting. I never heard that. Where are you getting that information? Is to say, well, one of the things that has clearly happened is that we're seeing like legally present citizens and green card holders being rounded up and sent to concentration camps. Kamala Harris wasn't going to do that, right? You don't see Democrats using ICE to round people, to kidnap people off the streets of Boston and, Birmingham, Alabama, and New York City to send them to like concentration camps in foreign countries. So again, I want people to start thinking about this from a place of inquiry. The other thing I'm going to remind you all of here, because it's really important, is that you can't beat people into submission. Meaning like you can't say to people, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Don't you know, right? Or you're in a cult. Like we can say that here, but we're not going to say that in our one-on-one conversations with people that we know, right? Face to face. We're not going to use those tactics. We save those for the ones with our, compadres who are on the same side of the fence. You have to apply in that kind of a scenario the exact same strategies that apply when you're doing deep canvassing, which is active listening, driving at the needs of the individual person, finding out where they're getting their information, what has led them to believe what they believe, and to keep asking questions and then being like, that's really interesting. I never heard that. What I've been listening to is X, Y, and Z that says something different. Maybe you'd be interested in reading some of that. Oh, no, that's all fake news. Well, then the person is kind of a lost cause. All right. Now, I'm not going to claim that people don't have things to complain about with the Democrats. I myself was complaining about the Democrats on this very broadcast when Chuck Schumer did what he did in relation to the budget resolution. I am not somebody who thinks the Democrats are without flaw. Okay. But simultaneously, from an ideological and an implementation standpoint, there's a vast difference between these two parties. Vast. The world we would have been living in if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz had been elected is very different from the world that we are living in right now. Okay. I will just tell you though, you have to come at people with a perspective of compassion and listening if you expect to open a conversation that will hopefully be the first of many, because you can't flip people in a single conversation. to open a conversation that will widen their worldview, okay? You cannot go at it with like, how could you fall for that? You're so effing stupid, right? Like, not the approach. You have to do like, huh, that's really interesting. I never heard that before. Where'd you get that? Huh. That's really fascinating because, you know, honestly, if you look at what the two policy platforms are, they're really different. Okay. You have to approach it from that perspective. Where are you getting your information? Why do you believe that? What benefit do you think it does to the country to think that everybody's corrupt, right? Lots of ways to approach it. All right. That's it for today, my friends. I will catch you all here tomorrow at regular time. Please, if you're watching on the replay, drop me a comment. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up and a subscribe. All those things tell the algorithm that you like what we're doing here, and it means the reach of this broadcast gets bigger. Somebody yesterday in the comments was really funny. They're like, how come this channel only has this number of subscribers when all these white guys are running around out there with 4 million? I think you answered your own question. Unfortunately, even on our side of the fence, people in our audience, not in this audience, but in the audience for left-leaning news and analysis generally, tend to prefer to get their news from white men. And we've talked about this a lot here, that, you know, there's inherent bias in everything that we approach. And all the fantastic women commentators out there are all at much lower levels of subscribers. So do your part, subscribe, and like this broadcast, and drop me a comment if you're watching on the replay. And if you really like what we're doing here, please consider becoming a paid subscriber over at patreon.com/resistancelive for as little as $5 a month. You help me to keep this broadcast afloat and do this work and pay my staff. All right. Lots of love, everyone. I will catch you all here tomorrow. Take care.